welcome. My name is Dan McDonald, host of the Dan McDonald Show on AM 800 CKLW, and a big supporter of our community here. This project is all about supporting local, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be a part of it. Today, March 20th, 2021, is the one-year anniversary of the first recorded case of COVID-19 here in our Windsor, Essex community. Since even before that first date, though, we saw the world rocked, gripped by a global pandemic that has affected each aspect of daily life for everyone. It was the first time that I can ever remember in my life where you're watching the news, you're listening to the radio, and then when you turn it off, you're living it. It's the first I've ever experienced like that. It really touched all of us. Since even before that first local case, we've been hearing about this coming, and then March 20th, the first case was recorded. Throughout that first year, the virus in Windsor, Essex, we've seen schools closed. Workers were sent home, businesses struggling to stay afloat. People were isolated. Very sadly, tragically, lives were lost. And I think it's safe to say all of our lives were changed forever in all of this. We've all watched a virus that does not discriminate hit our community and change it. We have had efforts to slow it, efforts to stop it, and it's so great. It's music to my ears to say the light at the end of the tunnel is arriving. Spring is coming. Vaccinations are beginning to be rolled out around the world, and we begin gradual reopenings that support our economy while we remain vigilant to protect our safety and our public health as well. Many initiatives have played out during this pandemic, and tonight we're highlighting an amazing poetry project with the city of Windsor that aims to inspire and give hope while creating a lasting record of our collective community consciousness during one of the most challenging years we've ever faced together. Windsor's Poets Laureate are proud to launch the poetry collection, A Dance of Self-Isolation. And this is COVID poems from the biggest little city in Canada in honor and recognition of the year we've come through and the challenges that still lay ahead. I got to read the book last night and it was moving. There were laughs, there were tears, and I could relate to every single word in this book. I think we all can because we have lived this. It's an amazing work. To help share these poems tonight, we have an amazing panel on board. I'm pleased to be joined by Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkins, Windsor's Poet Laureate Emeritus Marty Gervais, Poet Laureate Marianne Mulhern, Youth Poet Laureate Samantha Bedoa, Windsor City Councillor Joanne Geniak, Windsor's Commissioner of Community Development and Health Services Yelena Payne, Windsor Regional Hospital Board Chair Anthony Paniccia, Hotel du Grace Healthcare President and CEO Janice Kaffer, and Bev Becker, Board Chair for the United Way Centraide Windsor, Essex County. Thank you all so much for being a part of this incredible book and for being here tonight to share some of these poems. It's great having you. I'd like to first begin with welcoming Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkins, who not only supports the publication through the city's Poet Laureate program, but he himself, I remember I was so unbelievably impressed, took to social media to a few times in 2020 to reflect on the pandemic through poetry. He has led the city in through some of the darkest days of COVID-19 with initiatives supporting Windsorites through very uncertain times. Mayor Dilkins, please, if you could, start us off with your poem, To Mask or Not to Mask, which is included in this collection. Over to you.
Well, thanks very much, Dan. So the poem goes something like this. When COVID first arrived here, only one thing was clear. Stay away from all others. Don't get too near. Canada's top doc said, don't cover your face. It won't do any good. There's no scientific evidence in place. So the people, they listened and they heeded that advice to the point now that many will likely pay the price. And it won't be those who are afraid where that price will be paid, rather those who roam cavalier, not dissuaded by common sense or fear. Those who feel the fences of their yard give them some type of COVID immunity card. Open the gate, bring in the coolers. The neighbors will never know, they're just a couple of droolers. And when the party is done, beer bottles collected, empty bottles of rum, no more fun. Friends gone home to nurse their hangovers, plans made for next weekend to have the whole gang over. The clock starts ticking. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. 1,209,600 ticks and talks around the clock, the number of seconds in 14 days where COVID can ferment inside you and have its own way. You see, good friends and very special others, your sloppy behavior can affect everyone, fathers, daughters, mothers, and brothers. Your neighbors, the droolers, They're actually quite smart. They follow the rules, wear a mask, stay apart, even wash the handles on the grocery cart. They wouldn't be caught dead on the other side of your fence. Your risky behavior proves to them you're just dense. Oh, but let's look at our friends across the river. They argue, cuss, and fight. To wear a mask or not wear a mask, they feel is their democratic right. Now they hold the most unfavorable record around. Highest viral cases and record numbers of deaths abound. Trump points his fingers at the states and their leaders. He's yet to figure out you can't solve this problem by only being a tweeter. So the top doc now says the evidence is clear. A mask will save lives when out in the public sphere. To be or not to be, that was Hamlet's question. Oh, the poison put him 6 feet under. Don't let that be your direction. COVIDiots take risks that most normal people feel are wrong. Use your brain, cover your face, keep you, your friends, and your family strong. For we can beat this virus and send it away, but you can't act like a mask hole if you want things to be okay. So next time you're at Costco or even the hardware store, you need to run in quick to get that item near the door. Remember the mask that's sitting right there, the one that slides nicely over your ears, no need to mesh your hair. That little lightweight mask that could save just one life, a stranger, a neighbor, your children, or even the life of your wife. My mask keeps you safe for me, and your mask keeps you trouble-free. So do the right thing and live to see another dawn. Do everyone a small favor and put your mask on.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. I know you wrote that back in August 2020, which was kind of the middle point of the year. And a lot happened before that, and a lot happened after that. In several interviews, I know you were on the show around that time as well. You said that you did not run for office to close the city and the economy while altering services and asking everyone to stay home, but that you've done what was necessary, even when it was not popular, to help save lives. Tell me a bit about what it's been like leading a community during a global pandemic.
It's been very interesting, and I've had the pleasure, I suppose, or the curse of having lived through and guided the community through the worst flood in the city's history, a tornado, and now the pandemic. And certainly, it's proven challenging on many fronts because there is no playbook for this. We're all living this shared experience together. And I think of the number of times that I and Jan Kaffer and Councillor Geniak and frankly everyone on the screen has said we are all in this together. Everyone needs to do their part. I can't think of a situation where this is more true than the last year that we've lived through together. And so we've done and made decisions that are in some cases unpopular, and every case affects someone's life, someone's normal routine, whether it's those who are swimmers or hockey players, those who want to outdoor skate, those who ride the bus. We've had to make all sorts of decisions that you are acting in real time, in rapid time. The situation is changing so frequently that especially early on, it was tough to hit the mark because we could make a decision, prepare a press release to get ready to issue, and literally within the course of 2 hours, have to pivot, redirect, and change course. And so even when I reflect back, Dan, on this particular poem, of course, written contemporaneous to the time that we were in, the number of things that have changed, over that time where people are smarter and a little bit wiser. We've evolved even from that period of time in 2020, and we've done that together. So it's been certainly very interesting, but it's probably not a year. I don't think any of us will ever look back and say that was among the best years of our life. But certainly we'll always look back and remember the trials, the tribulations, and the challenges that we had. And how, because there's light at the tunnel, I think it's fair to say we're all going to come out of this. We're going to be okay, and we will find our new normal.
Absolutely. And, I was really impressed. I remember, I think I tweeted you saying the next time you're on the air with me, we're going to have a poetry competition, slam competition. But I really like the poems. I love them. I love the video too. As far as this poetry collection, though, is concerned, why does this matter to you so much? What does it do for us during this time and in the future, this book?
Well, it's a really good question. I'll tell you what I did early on in the pandemic. I was at home for the first 14 days. Most people will remember that I was away with my family when the pandemic was declared. And so when I got home, I had to isolate myself for 2 weeks. And it was a very intense time. But when I wasn't working, I was saying, what was it like here back 100 years ago in 1918 when the last pandemic was here? I was looking up Windsor Star articles trying to figure out what it was like, what the mayor of the day was saying, what kind of actions were the council taking, recognizing, of course, that they were going to be appropriate for the time, that the era that they were in. But I just wanted to get a flavor of what this was like. And so it was difficult to pinpoint any particular decisions. It wasn't well recorded, in my humble opinion. But at the end of the day, I think this book actually gives you a slice of what was going on. And I hope people look back at it with the emotion that many of the poems, and I have read the book myself, the emotion that was intended. Some of it's supposed to be funny. Some of it was supposed to capture the sheer fear that we all had, and all of it trying to do the right thing. Everyone's trying to do the right thing. And so this book is a compendium collection of that historic record that anyone could go back and say, I just want a flavor for that time period in 2020. And they could pick this book up and you will get a great flavor for what that year was like.
Yeah, it's an incredible snapshot. Like, it really is an artifact for our community in this that strange year, in this very strange time. But Mayor Drew Dilkins, thank you so much. We're going to come back to you too very shortly, but appreciate it. Fantastic contribution. Now, this collection would not have come together without the vision of Marty Gervais, Windsor's Poet Laureate Emeritus, who has also published the book through his local publishing house, Black Moss Press. Marty is an award-winning poet, journalist, photographer, playwright, historian, editor, and teacher, and he became Windsor's first poet laureate back in 2011 and was named to his current position of honor in 2019. Welcome, Marty. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll begin with a couple poems if we can. I believe you have the title poem of this book, A Dance of Self-Isolation. Whenever you're set, Marty.
Well, it's great being part of this. I'm really pleased to see all of you here. All of us talking about poetry at the right time. And the two poems that I'm going to read are "A Dance of Self-Isolation," which is the title of the book. And just as a little preview to it, when the pandemic happened a year ago, I had just gotten out of the hospital. I was very, very ill, and that's what the poem is about. But it's about learning I was in kind of like in training for this isolation already. I danced alone in the sunlight of the back of the house, my first day out of the hospital after acute kidney failure, my first day of isolation that I call freedom. And ahead of me, 3 months of winter, moving from one space to another in the house, following the shift of sunlight, its warmth through the cold windows, snow covering the ground just beyond, and I moved slowly, more a pantomime of a silly dance, my ailing body pretending to lift and move, my limbs shrunken, practicing this painful grace, yearning to blossom in this routine of hope. And just when I was ready to embrace the business that I once knew, the world around me began to settle into this mandated routine of social distancing, self-isolation, and working from home. And back I went, retreating to the comfort of my rooms, trailing the sun again, eager for its warmth as I stood and stared out the south window of my house to marvel at the magnolia tree that stretched alive in budding color, playing its own crazy pantomime of dance.
Beautiful.
And the other poem that I'm going to read from this book is, when you're in this pandemic, you end up, at least in my case, I end up going for lots of walks, and I was so grateful to have the sunshine to do that. And the poem is called "On My Walk." And it's really neighborhood. Near twilight, in this walk down an alley, grown over with tall grass and solitary wavering, sunlit Queen Anne's lace, I feel the world around me, grow anxious of new routines, weary of unsettling news, yet in trailing down this hopeless long line of tall, rickety wooden fences, garbage cans, and discarded tires, I see someone has suspended a teacup over a delicate plate, and it twirls silently in the fading day, reminding me I am not alone.
Beautiful stuff, Marty. Gorgeous. It's funny, you mentioned a dance of self-isolation. You were getting out of the hospital and then this happened. Was it must be strange because you didn't really get to reset to go back to normal life. What was that like, kind of coming out of the hospital and then going back into isolation and the world just being completely different?
Well, I was prepared for it in a certain sense because when I was here at home, recovering from the problems I had at the hospital, um, and I went back to work very, very briefly when everything shut down. But in a certain sense, as I say, I think I was in training for it. I was grateful. And, I don't know whether all of you remember, but I remember the sunlight the most, and the sunlight, coming in the morning at the back of my house, and I was grateful to see the sunlight. I couldn't go anywhere, and but I thought it was self isolation, but it was in some ways I was so grateful, that I had this experience to recover, to heal, and also to pay attention to small things. You know, COVID-19 has been a time of reflection,
Mm.
narrowing that focus and getting to know the things around you, that we pay so little attention to because work takes us away, interrupts our daily life, and it's not that we've stopped working. Some of us have, I know, but it means we've retreated to our homes, and suddenly there we are noticing things we never noticed before. I spent last spring, for example, and last summer at my house, and I hate to admit this, but exploring my wife's garden, and I never realized until I was doing that we actually had a magnolia tree in my backyard and flower beds full of different colored daylilies. And I'm a poet, and shame on me that I never paid any attention to this. So it's hard to believe, but in doing so, it made me pause, made me reflect, and I think that's where the poetry comes in, and it reminds us that there's something deeper that we can tap into that particular impulse, that feeling, and it's something very human, very real, and it's important. Um,
It, and about a year ago too, we were just a few weeks away from National Poetry Month, which you typically celebrate lots of in-person events. You do the poetry reading at a Windsor Council meeting, and then the world shut down. Everybody went online, and social distancing came in. You and Windsor's Poets Laureate accepted an invitation from the mayor to record videos and write poems, and that would be shared on social media. Would you say there's a saying about music? It said, "Heartache never hurt my record collection." Would you say this pandemic, and this is trying to look at the glasses half full way of it, did it help writing? You said a lot of people turned to reflecting, and we were forced to kind of look inside ourselves. We might not have liked what we saw. Maybe we did like. Maybe we discovered new things. Did it help you as an artist, as a poet, this time?
oh, absolutely. I mean, I think Mayor Dilkins said that in his quarantine, he turned to poetry. I mean, we turn to poetry when we have this great emotion, when we have the time. I mean, we turn to it in moments of sadness, of joy, of exuberation, of love, and certainly for me as a poet, I've actually put together about three different books, during this pandemic. I've had the time, but I've also, as I said before, you start paying attention to things that you never really considered. You didn't have the time to do it. Silly things. I mean, suddenly you notice. I noticed that on a shelf, something's been sitting there for so long, and I suddenly realize it's there. And I think this is good. And I think as poets, and so many of my poet friends have told me that they've been writing like crazy during this pandemic, and because it's a time to, I don't know, to take inventory of our hearts and our souls, and I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. Now, you served as Windsor's first poet laureate until 2019. The mayor and council bestowed upon you the honorary title of Poet Laureate Emeritus. What does the Poet Laureate program mean to you? Why does it matter? And what do you love most about it, Marty?
Well, poetry, as I say, is important in our lives, and when I became poet laureate, I said that I wanted to tell Windsor's story, and I wanted to tell some of the not so well known tales, from our past. And like when I wrote a poem once, and I read it at city council about a baseball park that sat right outside the armories, in downtown Windsor, or a poem about Vital Ouellette's home that's still downtown. It's right behind the Bank of Montreal. It's not on Ouellette Avenue, but it's right behind that particular bank. And this is what I love about the role of the poet laureate. It's telling Windsor's story. It's telling people we actually have a story. And then during this pandemic, it's telling people to care for one another and that we care what happens to people in this city. And that's why the Poet Laureate program matters. And we're fortunate in having a city council and a mayor and city councilors like Joanne Gignac who see this as an important position for the city. I certainly do. I think it gives voice to so many, so many feelings and so many perspectives in the city.
Absolutely. Marty, thank you so much. I know we'll be hearing from you again a little bit later on the program, but beautiful pieces, and congratulations on an amazing book as well. I'd now like to welcome Windsor's current Poet Laureate, Marianne Mulhern. And if you're not familiar, Marianne is an award-winning poet who's been writing poetry since 2001. She's written about life in a convent in the 60s, about growing up in a cemetery house in St. Thomas, most recently about the Donnelly tragedy in Lucan, Ontario. She was named Windsor's second Poet Laureate in 2019. Marianne, you have penned the bulk of the poems included in this collection, and I was hoping if you could share a few of them right now.
I'd love to read some of the poems, and this is such a marvelous collection, and I agree with everything Marty said about poetry. I really believe poetry is more than words, and that it allows people a connection, and that we need that now more than ever. So early on in the pandemic, a friend of mine and I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have lunch? And she invited me to her home. So I wrote the poem, COVID Lunch. My friend of many years invites me for lunch. At her table, we distance. Wine, food, and words bring us close. We've enjoyed meals in Windsor restaurants, joked with waiters, knocked back shots of tequila sent over by owners. This seems more special, coming together in a time of danger. Maybe COVID knocks at the door, scratches on the window.
Nice, beautiful.
There's another poem, a designer in the US promised to design wedding gowns for doctors and nurses who were working with COVID patients. This really made my imagination go crazy. And so I wrote the poem, A Dress for Her Wedding. A fashion designer offers wedding dresses to healthcare workers, doctors, and nurses who comfort those who suffer COVID. A bride-to-be stands before a mirror. Her dress of fantasy, satin, lace, brocade, all her dreams woven into white, roses she'll carry in her hands, every petal a kiss for her bridegroom, every thorn a prayer for a COVID cure. And I'll finish with Witness of Ducks, which a friend of mine told me, a story that he told me, and I wrote the poem, Witness of Ducks. Every day, an old man walks to the river, throws handfuls of grain to ducks who gather, wait to be fed, like children at a boarding school, monks in a monastery. People say ducks gathered near his gravesite, kept silence during prayers, as if they knew how to show respect, how to mourn.
Beautiful pieces, Marianne. I love A Dress for Her Wedding. I've talked to so many brides and grooms this year who had to cancel, or last year who had to cancel or derail their wedding plans. And the line about every petal a kiss for her bridegroom, every thorn a prayer for a COVID cure, incredible. And, speaking of of derailed. Everyone's lives have been derailed somehow. And you're a poet accustomed to standing before crowds to share your words. What has it been like being poet laureate when everyone has kind of turned to the digital format? Much different for sure, but what is that like for you as a poet, as a performer too, as someone who performs your words that you write? How has it been?
It's a lot different. And I certainly recognize that we cannot have gatherings, and we cannot visit schools. We can't visit long-term care homes either. I find this is quite lovely, actually. I find it's, first of all, it's a lot easier. Don't have to go anywhere, don't have to, but I love meeting people, and I love the interaction with people, and I'm missing that. That I'm missing. This does provide a tool, and it provides communication, which we so desperately need. However, it's not the same as being before an audience and then in relating with them after, signing the books that they buy, talking to them, seeing what their response is. And I'll never forget one reading. I just want to tell this little story. I was reading in Hamilton, and I was reading the cemetery book, Touch the Dead, that night. And a man came up to me afterwards and said, I know why you went into a convent. And I said, you tell me, why did I go into a convent? He said, what young man is going to court a girl who lives in a cemetery house? I thought, yeah, he's got it right. So little stories come from these things, from readings, but also stories come from these Zoom presentations that people ask about after. So it's wonderful.
I love that. And I love your poem too. As someone told you about the man who goes down and feeds the ducks. What has most inspired you this year as you sat down to craft the poems that are in this collection? And have you found comfort in writing? Have you turned to writing like so many of us have turned to things like art or books or movies? Was writing a source of comfort for you during all of this?
Oh, I totally agree with Marty. I've been noticing things that I was so busy before I didn't really notice. And I've been taking a walk by the river every single day, just about. I love the river. I live close to it. Now I'm noticing the ducks and the geese and the swans and Pesh Island. And I'm noticing people who walk and people who greet me on the trail, and they say hi. And I'm seeing, for example, one of the poems that's in this book is about little flowers that were growing from rocks last springtime. And I thought, if those little flowers can be so beautiful and thrive in a rock, we can thrive too. We can be okay. All exactly like Marty said, so many things we didn't notice before, I notice now, and I love it.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful way of looking at it for sure. And I think we can all relate. So many of us have turned to nature. And if nothing else, it's really proven to how important and how vital art is, because that's what so many of us turn to kind of keep our sanity, nature and art. It's amazing. Marianne, thank you so much for sharing your poems with us tonight. Truly beautiful work. Next, I'd like to welcome Windsor's current youth poet laureate, Samantha Bedoa. Now, Samantha is a staple in the spoken word poetry scene in Windsor. She's edited several books for Black Moss Press, created a writing and poetry mentoring series for youth, and read poems at a homelessness fundraiser as well. She also published her first collection of poetry, So Am I is the title of it. And in 2020, during her time as Youth Poet Laureate, Samantha, thank you so much. I believe you are here to share some words, some four-letter words in particular. Welcome, Samantha.
Thank you. It's truly amazing to be here, and I jump at any opportunity to sit with people and talk poetry. So this is wonderful. I'm going to be sharing a poem called Four-Letter Words today, and it's really about feeling untethered and how to deal with that. I don't count the days anymore. Time passes quickly, too fast for me to keep up. I am running towards all that I still know. I know that the cracks in my blinds will let sun through, waking me up gently each morning, a centuries-old alarm clock. I am running towards all that I can still hold. I hold memories in my sleep, cradle smiles and laughs, first steps, family dinners. I am running towards statistics in newspapers that I wish were names, that I want to remember. I am running towards all that I have, towards 4-letter words that bring me comfort, like love and hope.
Beautiful. Two beautiful 4-letter words as well. Love and hope. Samantha, I was reading your other work too, and you talk a lot about youth in your poems, your poem Echoes, which is also in this book. You said that as youth poet laureate, you've witnessed the resilience and courage of Windsor youth. What has it been like to face the unique challenges the pandemic has posed for young people during this time?
It has been truly amazing watching young people bounce back. I know that COVID-19 has been, a marker of these years, but it hasn't just been COVID-19. It's been all of the civil unrest and how much youth in general, their lives have changed, being in school, not being in school, and watching them adapt to these situations and truly grow and create in the face of all these challenges, in the face of so many obstacles, has just been wonderful to see.
Do you feel, because your poem Echoes, it was a beautiful read, and it was about your generation and even younger. Do you feel people are the youth voice is being heard more, is being listened to by Windsor Essex?
I think Windsor Essex is in a very unique position that a lot of other places aren't in. We really do build up our youth artists. So many, avenues for creativity in the city are dominated by youth, and that is not something you see everywhere. So that really cannot be understated. It's amazing what the youth in the city can do, and when you give young people a chance, they will dominate and they will create in any avenue. There are amazing visual artists, drummers, poets, even working in the slam, which was a fairly underground scene. I saw poets from all ages who would lead on national stages, and to come from our city it makes me really, really proud.
Yeah, amazing. Your time as youth poet laureate comes to an end next month. What message would you like to give to your successor?
I would tell them to really take time to contemplate about what you want to do for the city, but also what your role is as a laureate. Poets are inherently storytellers, which are inherently community based. So you need to know what serves your community and when it's your time to speak and when it's not your time to speak. And that's a big takeaway that I've taken from this year. When it's my time to speak and when it's time for marginalized voices to speak. So focus on community building, and absolutely know when it is your time to talk and when it is not. Listening as a poet laureate is absolutely just as important, if not more important, than writing and speaking. So I would just keep those things in mind.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Samantha, for sharing your work. And I love your pieces. Big fan of your work as a poet as well.
Thank you.
Yelena Payne, up next. She is Windsor's Community Development and Health Commissioner, which means she has been at the forefront of work to support our most vulnerable populations from the onset of the pandemic. Yelena and her team have played a key role leading or contributing to several initiatives, including the Families to Families, grocery gift cards, establishment of a day program for persons experiencing homelessness, and a rollout of emergency childcare for frontline workers and first responders. They also led the Isolation and Recovery Center for persons experiencing homelessness, as well as regional farm workers, and supported congregate living settings such as shelters and housing with support homes, especially when an outbreak, and mass COVID testing for shelters and congregate living settings as well. Yelena joins the conversation today to read Marianne's poem, Migrant Worker. Welcome, Yelena, and don't forget to unmute.
Thank you, Dan. I think I am unmuted, so thank you very much. Yeah, I have the privilege today of reading a poem that definitely aligns with the work that my team and I have been doing for the past year. And so the poem is called Migrant Worker by Marianne Mulhern. Snakes lurk beneath leaves in fields, orchards, and greenhouses. My fellow workers and I fear a virus, seeds of death, silent, hidden in the light, the dark. In our crowded bunkhouse, a man struggles to smother his cough, afraid to be tested, to be sent home. shamed by sickness, nothing in his hands for his wife, his children.
Wow. Very, very heavy emotional picture painted there by Marianne. Um, the city is involved with isolation and recovery centers supporting temporary foreign workers and persons experiencing homelessness. The efforts to support agricultural workers is really unique in our region, I think. And the city is leading what is essentially a response to a health crisis. What has your experience been over the last year, Yelena?
Well, Dan, as stated earlier, many of the efforts have focused on providing isolation and recovery centers, both for agriculture workers and individuals experiencing homelessness. And I think, as the mayor had stated very early on in this session, there is no playbook. We have not had a playbook. I mean, we do what we do day in and day out to support our community and our respective departments with our respective programs and services. But COVID did not come with the playbook. We create pandemic plans. We do emergency management drills. I'm the co-chair of our Emergency Management Operations Center, but nothing has prepared us for this. And so every day it's about, facing new problems, new challenges, and working as a community to come up with solutions to address those, all with the goal of keeping everybody in our community as safe as possible and trying to minimize the spread of this invisible virus.
The poem you read, Migrant Worker, reading that, what was that like? Did that speak to you? Did it paint a vivid picture for you, someone who's been kind of working on the front lines on the situation this poem describes?
Correct. Thank you. Yeah, we've been part of the supporting the migrant workers in an isolation and recovery center since June of 2020. And I would say that I practiced the poem several times prior to reading it. But when I actually had to read it, I did find it difficult. And I think part of that is just because of the struggles that I know folks have gone through. I do feel as a community, we are in a different place. And I think the words that Marianne captured so accurately and so eloquently was a reflection early on in the pandemic, but I do think we've come a long way. I'm hopeful that fear among the agriculture workers has subsided. I hope that them and, the farm operators know that, we are here to support them. We have received a lot of gratitude and appreciation for the support that we've provided to people. And so I do think we've come a long way in this pandemic in supporting people.
A question that I get a lot on the show, even when we talk about this subject, is why is the city leading the IRC for temporary foreign workers when the workers are in the county? If you could field that question.
Yeah, great question. I think part of it is many of the services that are wrapping around to address the pandemic are actually regional in nature. Our health unit is a regional body. Social services at the City of Windsor is a regional service. My department supports both the City of Windsor and the County of Essex. And so it's very natural for us to align with this type of work. And that's why we're involved and we stepped in when we were asked to step in.
And what are the next steps? Where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, there is a light at the end of the tunnel with vaccinations. With every rollout, long-term care falls under me, Huron Lodge. And, we did go into outbreak in December. And, we were at the tail end. We managed to keep COVID out of our long-term care facility for almost 10 months. But unfortunately, when the pandemic, when the virus did enter our home, we had a light at the end of the tunnel because the vaccine was just around the corner. And so we very quickly worked with Windsor Regional Hospital and the health unit to ensure that our residents were vaccinated, designated caregivers were vaccinated, staff were vaccinated. And now with every phase of the rollout of the vaccine, we move one step closer to recovery. And I think that light at the end of the tunnel, it has been a long year. Many of us are very tired. Many of us have not seen a vacation day in over a year. And, I think it gives us that hope to forge forward and keep going and get through this as a community.
Well, thank you for all you've done. And thank you for sharing the poem. The practice paid off, by the way. Beautiful delivery.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you so much, Yelena. Up next, we have Anthony Paniccia. He is board chair for Windsor Regional Hospital, in with us today representing the hospital team. And this is really interesting too. In a memo from David Mouche, who is Windsor Regional Hospital president and CEO, from January 22nd, 2020, before everything went the way it did, he writes, and I love looking back at these types of time capsules. He wrote, recently, there has been a novel, new coronavirus, first identified in Wuhan, China. There are estimates of over 400 people infected worldwide and 9 reported deaths. The first case was confirmed in the United States yesterday. That must have just been like distant thunder to hear healthcare workers to hear that. He goes on to provide clinical details known at the time and ends with, our pandemic response team will be meeting regularly as the situation evolves to ensure we are ready and provide updates on a regular basis. Now, the head of Windsor Regional Hospital starts each day by sending his team a message with local updates, international updates, and things to remember as they battle COVID-19. And I love this. From the start, they've adopted the words of poet Maya Angelou as their motto, hoping for the best, prepared for the worst, and unsurprised by anything in between. That's something we can put in our back pocket for all of life, I think. They've paused surgeries. They've created tented isolation rooms and converted them to negative pressure rooms, created an assessment center, screening stations, a field hospital at St. Clair College, stepped in to help support COVID-ravaged long-term care homes, and they're now heavily involved in local vaccination efforts as well. And through it all, the teams are making it work at facilities where COVID-19 has underscored that our present systems are unable to cope with some of the realities of modern infection control protocols and patient isolation. The Windsor-Essex region is working to secure funding from the planning and design phase of our new regional acute care hospital, and people joining with their voices together to tell upper levels of government that we can't wait. Anthony joins us today to share Marianne's poem, Shovels in the Ground. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you, Dan. Great to be here, really. As an accountant, I've got to say, these words are unbelievable, and the writers and the speakers are truly exceptional. I only hope I can do Marianne's words justice. It's Shovels in the Ground by Marianne Mulhern. I want to drive down Highway 42, see shovels in the ground, Windsor's new regional hospital, foundations strong and deep, walls rising in the sun, a plan for single rooms where patients can rest, recover day by day. Now there are fields open to the sky. They wait for a blessing, warmth of summer on walls that rise to embrace, city and county both, to offer hands of healing, words of comfort, feel better.
Beautiful stuff. Thank you, Anthony, for sharing that. Can you tell us how this pandemic has impacted our hospital system? I mean, we all hear the stories, but I don't think you can know unless you're in the system, how it has highlighted kind of the cracks in the foundation, if you will, and why this has hammered home the need for new infrastructure right now.
I think one thing that can be said is, the oldest part of our facilities was built in 1910. That's even before the 1918 pandemic. I obviously don't need to say that out loud, but it really does tell you how old our infrastructure is. So that's at the OLEC campus. And then the campus at the Met campus was built partially in 1928, 10 years after the first pandemic. We have 20% of our rooms are single rooms. The other 428 plus beds are all shared rooms. That means one toilet for multiple patients. In some areas of the hospital, we actually have one restroom for 8 patients. we aren't even close to the standards that are being set at new facilities. That's just restrooms. And I know people don't like to talk about it, but it's really, our goal is one butt, one seat for a new hospital. But the other things that we have to think about is modern day ventilation. We had pressurized rooms where duct taping, zippers, portable HVAC units, just trying to band-aid rooms together so that we can treat these patients. It's pretty unbelievable that we're in the situation we're in. It's incredible. You look across the river or up the 401 and you see brand new facilities, and it's eye-opening if you walk into one of those facilities. Larger hallways, more single rooms, you've got space for equipment. And here we're working with literally rooms that were pre-1918 pandemic. Pretty incredible.
Yeah, it really is. Reading the poem, Shovels in the Ground, did that give you hope?
It gives me so much hope. We have to think this hospital it's not just the hospital, it's about transforming the healthcare system within our region. It's not just about Windsor Regional Hospital. It's not about Hotel Dieu Grace Hospital. Or healthcare, sorry. It's about transforming healthcare and how it's provided for the next 100 years. Healthcare today will not be the same as it is years from now. So when I drive by the site and I go, wow, this is unbelievable. Because if you think about it, Met Hospital was actually built on a field in 1928. And now, yes, we may be building in a field, but it's so that the whole region can take advantage of it. It's going to be an exceptional project, and I hope we move forward to stage number 2. And that's where the real hard work starts happening. It's the planning, it's the phasing of what opportunities present our community and how we can transform healthcare for the next 100 years. And there's going to be so much input and from the community. It really is a group effort. It's all of our partners, it's all of our community coming together and coming up with the great ideas that are going to be the foundation for this new hospital.
And it's great hearing from people who work in healthcare talk about the new hospital. Now, community support for our healthcare workers, it's been incredible. What message do you have for those who go to work every day to help fight this virus?
I'm eternally grateful. And I know David and his staff are eternally grateful for everybody who really has stepped up. I mean, it's housekeeping, it's nurses, it's the doctors, it's respirologists, it's the food workers, it's the people that are delivering it. It's really an incredible team that's in our community. It's not just the hospital, though. You got to remember all of our partners. It's the Windsor Essex County Health Unit, Hotel Dieu, Erie Shores, the Essex Windsor EMS, all the staff at the retirement homes. You've got St. Clair College, which has been instrumental in setting up so many things. It's the vaccination site and the clinics. It's really incredible. The University of Windsor. Then you've still got Schulich School of Medicine. All these partners and so many more have come together, and it really shows what our community can do when we pull together. And I'm so proud of every single one of these organizations. And I've got to say thank you to even our individuals that are working day to day. You've got the people at the grocery store and your, even the LCBO or the gas station. We need these people. We need these people to go into work every day. And we don't get to say it all the time, but thank you to them as well. Our healthcare heroes, they're fantastic. And I will never look at anybody who works in healthcare the same way again. And I don't think anybody in our community will.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Finally, what message do you have for the community as vaccinations continue to be administered and we start to see that light at the end of the tunnel? Any message to the community?
number one, please get your shots. You know, nothing to be fearful of. As soon as my age group is ready, I will be the first one in line. But no, I just want to say that our Windsor Regional staff, I believe we're up at 90%, and pretty much anybody who wanted a shot has got their first shot, and many of our staff have received both shots. So first, great job leading by example. Our healthcare heroes are the ones taking these shots, and you know, shows the amount of trust they have in these vaccines, which is great. And it's 100% spot on. These are safe. And these individuals know about healthcare. They're taking the shot. So get your shot. You know, the sooner you get vaccinated, the better. The sooner everybody gets vaccinated, the sooner we get to go back to living the new normal. Right. But at the end of the day, as a community, we've come this far, and we're going to get through it together. So really, thank you. Thanks for signing up. And those 80+-year-olds, if you've got a parent or a grandparent that hasn't signed up, or a mom or a dad or aunt, uncle, you know, help them, call the number, get them situated with a time slot. You know, just if your neighbor is having technical difficulties with their computer, please just knock on their door. We'll give you a pass on not social distancing, and help them get registered for their vaccination. You know, so it's looking forward to normal days.
Oh, you and me both, Anthony. I think all of us. Thank you so much, Anthony, for your words and sharing that piece as well. Next, we welcome Janice Kaffer. She is President and CEO of Hotel Dieu Grace Healthcare, the lead hospital for mental health and addiction support in our community, and the lead agency for child and youth mental health for this region as well. So important. Hotel Dieu has played a key role in this pandemic, taking recovering patients from Windsor Regional to free up beds, providing rehabilitation for recovering patients, guiding the village at St. Clair long-term care home through the worst seniors home outbreak in the region, helping the downtown mission through an outbreak that infected over 80 homeless people, as well as staff. The list goes on and on. Over the last year, you have spoken candidly about the impact of the stress of working in healthcare during the pandemic. You've admitted to being tired. You've spoken about the painful losses, isolation, guilt, and unrelenting pressure about the importance of taking care of our mental health, particularly now. You've said healthcare workers are not heroes, but that they're hardworking people who are doing their level best, which is amazing. In a moving feature by the Windsor Star's Ann Gervais, you spoke about taking a week off during the lockdown and putting together 30 sets of Lego that your sons played with 30 years ago. And you said there was something so satisfying about taking something that was a mess and putting it back together and having a finished product. For a year, we haven't been able to finish anything. It's been a constant box of Lego with no plan, no patterns, and as a few of us have said today, no instructions, no rule book. You're here today to read Marty Gervais, the healthcare worker in COVID. Welcome, Janice, whenever you're ready.
Thanks so much, Dan. And thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be part of this panel. And as you said, I'm reading The Healthcare Worker in COVID by our good friend, Marty Gervais. They are not bulletproof when they step into the room, when they move into a stranger's world and hear the staggered breathing, frantic eyes searching. They are a passing shadow for the sick who struggle for relief, a moment of calm, of peace, anything to shift this day into needed sleep, into somewhere safe. They are the guardian angels who move silently day and night, a voice of calm, of peace, and they know they haunt the very edge of harm's way, masked and gowned like moonwalkers, yet they are fearless in pursuit, slipping into the dim light of a hospital room, and it's their shadow that floats in the feverish moment. Yet it's their voice and their arms that embrace the ill and collapsed, and all the neighborhoods we know and remember.
Very powerful piece. Talk about a snapshot in time, The Healthcare Worker in COVID by Marty Gervais. I'll just ask you, Janice, how does it make you feel reading that poem?
The first time I read it, when it got sent to me, I actually got quite emotional reading about it. It talks about it talks about safety. It talks about the role that the staff have had in holding on to people in those last moments and some of the scary moments. You know, a diagnosis of COVID that requires you to be hospitalized is a very, very scary thing for individuals in our community. And it as you said at the beginning, it's doesn't discriminate. Everybody is vulnerable to this particular virus. And so I think that notion of silence and safety, and I think the staff across our community, healthcare workers, not just in hospitals, but across all healthcare service delivery, have been providing, I think what Samantha said, hope, the four-letter word of hope and love to our community. And I think in so many ways, that's what I was thinking about, is that notion of the night shift, the dim rooms, and slipping in and out of the rooms quietly, checking on people. It took me back to many years ago when I was a frontline nurse.
It's an image that's like, it's both, it's haunting and it's comforting because of the current situation. It was an amazing read, hearing you read it. I know you've spoken about the incredible strain the pandemic has placed on staff. Tell us a bit about how they're doing, how they cope with all of this, how you support them through the days and nights, and what message you have for each of them in the community during this time.
They're tired. I think that's the first thing I'd say. They're tired, and I think they're hopeful. I do rounds across the hospital. I talk to the staff, as Anthony said, staff from housekeeping and food services through to our clinical staff at all areas in our organization, both at the campus on Prince Road, TAFOR campus, as well as our offsite locations. And what I'm hearing a lot more now is that four-letter word of hope. I think our teams at Hotel Dieu and across healthcare at Windsor Regional Erie Shores, our partners, CMHA, and everywhere, are starting to feel hopeful again, that maybe this long, dark year, and for a lot of healthcare workers, it has been a very dark year, is starting to come to a close. It has been the hardest year of my life. I've been very public about that. It's been a very hard year for a lot of people. And many of our staff are not highly paid CEOs. They are individuals who are sometimes working in family situations where maybe their significant other has lost a job. And so our staff, like every other community member, have also had to deal with the economic hardships associated with what we've had to do as a community and as a province, as a country, as a world, actually. And so I think sometimes people think that the only pressure that healthcare workers have been under is just the dealing with the COVID, but it's not. And so what we're trying to do is to provide every measure of support we can. We have a peer support team at Hotel Dieu. We have a great partnership with CMHA, and they've introduced this wonderful pandemic therapist that has been working with many healthcare providers across our region. And I think in many ways, my job and the job of leaders right now is to be present, to be there. And as I said in one of my discussions with the team, is to not just go by and say, how are you today? I'm fine, but to actually stop and make room for an answer that maybe isn't so fine, and take that time to actually talk to someone. And I think that at this point in time, that's what we can do. And then when this is all over, we do have some work to do in terms of helping healthcare workers through the trauma of what they've been through this past year. A lot of work.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your honesty as well when you said, I'm tired. It's hard. It's important that we say that and acknowledge that. So, Janice, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it. Up next, Bev Becker is joining us on behalf of the United Way centered Windsor, Essex County, where she serves as chair of the board of directors. And as we heard from Yelena from the start, COVID has placed incredible pressure on our social services, including our food banks, our shelters, other emergency services that exist to support our most vulnerable. Early on, food banks struggled to stock shelves and remain open in the face of decreased levels of staffing and volunteers. People who didn't have food insecurity were all of a sudden faced with that. Over the last year, United Way established the Windsor Essex COVID Care Coalition to support food banks, provide grocery cards and food hampers, facilitate food delivery services, and support meal programs as well. They also set up helplines with community partners to help seniors and other vulnerable populations across access vital mental health supports. Bev joins us today, and Bev is going to be reading Marianne's poem, Windsor's Miracle. Bev, whenever you're set.
Yes, thanks, Dan. And I just want to start off by thanking, all of the partners in the community that have helped support the people in need in this community, the volunteers, and of course those who are able to donate. United Way and our partners could not have done the work without them. And I also want to thank Marianne for this beautiful poem. Windsor's Miracle. Like the parable of loaves of fishes, boxes and bags of food appear across Windsor. An army of volunteers sort through every can, every jar, every box. Enough to stock Windsor's food banks, enough to nourish hungry men, women, and children. People thrown out of work by a pandemic. Maybe COVID kept us apart only to bring us closer, to remove masks of indifference, open our eyes to those who have no food, those who have no home, and gladly offer each one of them hope.
There's that four-letter word again, hope, and it's a beautiful word. I love the line, maybe COVID kept us apart only to bring us closer. That was an amazing day too, that miracle day. I was there working down by the river and just seeing all the cars coming in. For that brief moment, we all got to our station and we thought, what if no one comes? What if it doesn't work the way we thought it would? Then you saw the cars coming in and it was just never ending. And it was a truly amazing emotional thing, I think, for anybody who is involved in any way at all. Can you tell us a little bit, Bev, just about the struggles that families have faced, particularly around food security and mental health during this pandemic?
Yeah, for sure, Dan. So food insecurity is caused by a lack of income or ability to access food. And the work disruptions caused by COVID is affecting people's income. There's no doubt about it. CERB is helping people get by, but unlikely bringing their income levels to a point where they can sustain all of their household income or expenses. And in some cases, this has forced families who have never needed support to look for help. According to the Food Bank Association, which represents 15 food banks in Essex County, during the first 3 months of the pandemic, the usage was up by 2.5 times the normal levels. And this puts an incredible strain on the systems, on top of dealing with the pandemic. And if we look back at a similar time between 2019 and 2020, since the pandemic started, we are actually trending at a 7% increase in unique people served at the food banks in our community. And, we still have a month to go, and it's unlikely that this usage will, be depleted. People are going to continue to need that support. But, so as a result, people are making really tough choices on how to spend the money that they have. They're willing to skip a meal or shop at the grocery store to make sure that they have, money to cover their heat, their electricity, and pay their rent. And unfortunately, rent has risen in Windsor in 2020 by 5.9%. So this is, adding to that strain on people and their budgets. In regards to mental health, the pandemic has been particularly hard on young people, and children are reporting some of the largest, declines in mental health compared to other populations. According to Children's Mental Health Ontario, the survey was conducted in the early days of the pandemic, and nearly 2/3 of youth said that their mental health had gotten worse since the pandemic.
Wow. Which is really scary, especially when it's youth mental health. It's something I think we don't often think about. And this has really shone a light on that, which is it's heartbreaking, but I'm glad the light is being shone on it so we can deal with it. Like so many have said, the way we do healthcare is going to change after all of this. It is changing. How does the United Way support the community, and how can community members, how can we give back to United Way to help carry out your mission, Bev?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So United Way is a member of the Windsor Essex COVID Care Coalition, and they've made an investment to ensure people had timely access to mental health services in the community. And this included the creation of a hotline with Family Services Windsor Essex that was available 24/7 so that people could get the help they needed when they needed it. In addition, United Way has youth programs that continue to focus on prevention, providing daily social activities and family visits to ensure that our young people in our community feel supported during this time of uncertainty. And as you're likely aware, Dan, there's some schools in our community where many students are showing up on a daily basis without a full lunch. So in January, with the support of FCA and LIUNA 625, the United Way launched a pilot program to test different program models of providing a free lunch to over 450 children in our community on a daily basis. This program is wrapping up at the end of April and will help us identify the plan going forward when it comes to food security initiatives that support children and youth in our community. And then finally, I just want to mention that United Way's Summer Eats program, which provided approximately 4,500 children and youth with snack boxes at 6 different schools across the region this past summer, will continue in 2021, and they'll help support our community as the impact of COVID is not over and parents are still struggling to make ends meet. There's lots of great information on our website for those that need help, and for those that want to help volunteer or make a donation. I do encourage our viewers to visit weareunited.com for more information.
Oh, thank you so much, Bev, for all you do. Everyone at United Way, appreciate you joining us this evening to launch this book. Thank you so much. I would now like to ask Mayor Dilkins to come back on and share Marianne's poem. And I love this one because I live in the neighborhood, so it definitely speaks to me. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkins is going to share Marianne's poem, When Whiskey Works, from the collection. Mr. Mayor, whenever you're ready.
Thanks very much, Dan. When Whiskey Works. It is 1918. The Spanish flu spreads across the world. Patients in Windsor crowd rooms and hallways at Hotel Dieu Hospital. Nuns care for them, offer doses of whiskey, the only medicine known to bring relief. Hiram Walker donates barrels of the cure.
I love this. It's just so short and so simple, but so powerful too. I love the way everyone has stepped up, especially with the whiskey. Amazing. I wanted you to read that poem in particular because it's about another virus over 100 years ago that Hiram Walker helped to fight, which is so full circle. It's one of those things, if you read it in a book, you wouldn't believe it, but it's real, it's reality. It jumped out at me because today, 100 plus years later, Hiram Walker stepped up to fight the virus in a big way. What can you tell us about the hand sanitizer initiative and some of the other ways corporate partners have stepped up and are continuing to support Windsor Essex during COVID-19?
Well, it really was barrels of the cure, again, that Hiram Walker donated. And I'm sitting at my desk and the phone rang, and it was the president of Hiram Walker and Sons calling to say, listen, we're going to shut down one line. We want to turn it into a hand sanitizer line. Can we work with you to figure this out? Because we don't have channels of distribution to get this material out to everyone who will need it. And we said 100%, we'll redirect staff. And so they provided it to us in, I think, 5-gallon pails. We had our redirected staff decanted into smaller vinegar. They're actually vinegar containers donated by Highbury Canco in Leamington. And it became a community effort to get the product, to distill it, to decant it, to deliver it, and make sure everyone who needed it had some available, because everyone will remember at the start of the pandemic, this was all in short supply. PPE, hand sanitizer, you couldn't get this stuff. And so they responded, one of the many community partners who responded so well, including BASF. It took laser transport. And by the end of 2020, we had distributed 24,000 liters of hand sanitizer that was produced locally to folks in the community who needed it. But it was, to your question, Dan, it was that element, but it was also Tourism Windsor Essex coming out with the Y2G Stand Strong campaign and the Takeout Tuesday campaign. Bev Becker talked about the Windsor Essex COVID Care Coalition. They brought partners together. The June 27th Miracle event, 2 million pounds of food, 11,000 volunteers, 100 food banks being helped. In fact, we still have that food, and we have City Council has agreed to let the Unemployed Help Center continue to use 80 Knox Arena so they can sort through the material and get it out to the food banks and the people in the community that are hurting, that need a little extra hand up right now. And we want to make sure that we get that food to them and help support them. But it was also families and folks who came forward. And it was, the Soltz family who said, we want to do something. How can we work with the city to have the biggest, fastest impact? And they said, we'll give money. We want to buy grocery gift cards. And Drew, can I leave it with you to see if you can get any leverage on that? I said, sure. I made a few phone calls to other people in the community, like Brian Schwab and the Savages, the Windsor Spitfires Foundation. And in 5 minutes, they called back saying, if they're in, we're in. Who else can we get to come on board? And Yell and his team executed that flawlessly and got food grocery gift cards into the hands of those who needed it quickly. And it just all came together. And I'll tell you, really a proud moment. I have often joked to say, I'm not sure whether I'm blessed or cursed as the mayor that's had the flood, the tornado, and now a global pandemic. But, I started saying that in jest, but there's no doubt in my mind, I'm firmly blessed to have this position. I'm so grateful to have this position. And the last year has really allowed me to see, every mayor will say they love the community, and I hope they do. They love the community in which they have the privilege of serving. This last year has really reinforced that love that I have for this community, because I've seen in very difficult times how people have come out to help their neighbors, their friends, and their family. And whether it was my decision to suspend transit, which definitely affected some people, how overnight 1,500 people joined a Facebook group to help make sure that those who were shut in could get groceries and pharmacy materials. To everything I just mentioned, and way more. We could go on for an hour on this. I'll tell you, the response, Dan, has been absolutely amazing, and I'm so proud of this community and how they've come together. It's just really an honor and a privilege to serve this community, and I'm just so proud of all of the elements that have come together at the most difficult time to make sure that everyone's taken care of.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It made me very proud to be from Windsor Essex. I've heard nothing but, how charitable, how generous we are here in Windsor Essex. So it was, in a sense, a beautiful thing to experience that we all really did come together. But Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your poems and reading some other ones as well. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Councillor Joanne Geniak, representing Windsor's Ward 6 in the East, she led the push for Windsor to establish a Poet Laureate program 10 years ago and has been one of its proudest supporters since day one. Councillor Geniak is here to share Marianne's poem, Phases of Hope, and to tell us about the innovative Windsor's Resilient Voices Initiative. Welcome, Joanne.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to be here. And as you mentioned, I'll be reading one of Marianne's poems, Phases of Hope. I hope I do it justice. The moon awaits a new year, phases of hope for all of us. Pesh Island sleeps now. Springtime will awaken trees, a million buds ready to welcome light. And we also wait for winter to pass, to become a memory of frost, ice, and snow. Too many names etched in stone. April will open flowers, fragrance of color and life, longer, brighter days. We'll walk, hold hands, sunlight on our faces, in our hearts.
And what a beautiful way, as we approach April and spring and the light at the end of the tunnel. I know last month, Marty and Marianne launched Windsor's Resilient Voices, a call for local poets, including youth, to submit 6-line poems on the themes of resilience to be posted on Transit Windsor buses and in various facilities. When are we going to start to see some of these poems? Because I cannot wait. I think it's an amazing initiative.
It is an amazing initiative, and you're going to start seeing those on Transit Windsor next month. And they'll also start appearing in many of the city facilities. One of the great spots is going to be at the WFCU Center, where we will be offering inoculations. And so that ability to, in a very open way, encourage people through poetry is going to be very evident in our community. We had over, 80 submissions, and that in itself speaks very clearly in regard to the talent and the people of Windsor reaching out to participate in this very historic moment to encourage others in our community.
Absolutely. And thank you for being a champion and a huge supporter of Poet Laureate program, and just for bringing us to the forefront to it. It's a phenomenal initiative, and it really celebrates what we do best.
It has been remarkable, and certainly historically, Windsor, that has its roots in Sandwich, is the oldest settlement west of Montreal. And so storytelling, poetry, and verbal history has really been a major part of sharing what our community has all been about. So council supporting establishing a Poet Laureate program 10 years ago was really, really a celebration and a recognition of how important that is. And I know many, many people in the city and from outside of the city have enjoyed Poetry at the Manor, an annual event that we hold that is absolutely amazing. Marty and Marianne have brought poet laureates from across Canada to share their works and participate in that annual event. Samantha, our first youth poet laureate. I mean, how talented are these people? Are we lucky here in Windsor or what? And even in the midst of this horrible, horrible pandemic, they step forward and encourage us through their works in an incredibly special way that I think just carries us through. Marty sharing and Marianne sharing their personal experiences, and Samantha in terms of generating these works. It's been invaluable to so many people.
Absolutely. Councillor Geniak, thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of this. Truly appreciate it.
Pleasure. And Dan, I want to take an opportunity. Anthony did a great job in terms of thanking the people that he works with on a daily basis for their incredible stamina throughout this pandemic so far. And I want to give a shout out to the people at the City of Windsor, our workers, our administrators, and Yelena Payne shared some time with us earlier. Yelena and her team have been absolute warriors in terms of making sure that people in our community have been looked after in conjunction with our healthcare facilities. Our emergency team with the fire chief, Stephen Laffer, our police chief, Pam Mizuno, all of these people on a daily basis are out in our community making sure that people get what they need. They're tireless. The workers who generally would be in City Hall on a daily basis were sent out into the community to various organizations and have made a real difference. So Anthony, thank you for stepping up, because you just encouraged me to say thank you to everybody that we work with on a daily basis for all they do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And as we close out this virtual launch, I wanted to give both Marty and Marianne an opportunity to share one final poem each. Marty Gervais to share a poem that he wrote that is in the book, The Voices. Marty, if you could, whenever you're ready.
Sure. I just want to applaud all the other readers today. We've done a great job. And I think this is a great event. The poem is called The Voices. It is morning. It is any day. It is every day. And the voices we hear are those on radio, television, newspaper. Politicians, journalists, talk show hosts, advertisers, people with opinions, selling something, or stories, or news, sometimes grim and real, sometimes eager and funny. And we listen in the midst of a lockdown where only the regular visitor to stop by is Canada Post. And the two of us, now in our 70s, sit and read the paper, sip mugs of hot tea, and wonder about a time that has stretched from the cold days of last spring to now, where we find ourselves cycling back to when all of this began. It is morning, it is any day, it is every day, and the voices after a while become our friends. The familiar, part of a routine we are unwilling to let go. The everyday words and stories that we pull on like an old sweater, and we listen or sometimes half listen, knowing our heart sometimes turns to believing what spring will bring us when the first shoots of new life begin to show in the yard.
Absolutely a beautiful piece, Marty. And I do have a question for you. We're going to bring back first Marianne to come on and read one of her poems, Homeless in Windsor.
Homeless in Windsor. Newspapers shout, stay home. I have a backpack, an old coat from the mission, Salvation Army shoes. COVID has closed shelters, left us to survive in doorways, on benches in a park. The mayor of Windsor promises the aquatic center. Some citizens complain. Drew Dilkins keeps his word. Today, I have a sandwich, hot coffee, a warm blanket, a safe place. Maybe tomorrow, I'll find my way into a life far from icy streets. I'll offer a hand to my brothers who shiver in the night.
Beautiful piece, Marianne. Wonderful voice too, and what a perspective. So now, thank you so much for sharing your work with us tonight. Appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for sharing and interpreting and performing these poems. One more question for Marty. The book, A Dance of Self-Isolation. I've been loving this book and I can't wait to read it and reread it and reflect again. Marty, when, where, and how can people get their hands on a copy of this book?
Well, the book officially launches April 6th as part of National Poetry Month, and people can get it from the museum, Windsor's Chimchuk Museum gift shop. They can order it online through Black Moss Press, just blackmosspress.com. But 100 complimentary copies are going out to 22 long-term care homes in Windsor, to our Windsor Regional Hospital and Hotel Dieu Hospital healthcare sites. They're going to go to first responders, including police, fire, and EMS, and they're going to be going into all of the Windsor Public Library's branches in the city of Windsor. And Mayor Dilkins will be giving away copies away as he continues his work throughout the community. So the book is going to be available all over the place. And the whole idea of this was to try and put these into the hands of healthcare workers as well. And to, with a big vote of thanks for all the work that they're doing.
Absolutely. And I'll be giving some away on my show as well. It's a phenomenal book. Congratulations to everyone who was a part of putting this book together. And again, blackmosspress.com. A portion of the proceeds too from each book is sold is going to support food banks in the community as well. I just want to say thank you to everyone, the poets, the panelists sitting down with me this evening to help launch this book, and also sharing so openly about your experiences, the impacts of this pandemic on the community. I'm glad I was able to be a part of this as well. And I think this book is so special, something that Windsor and all of us can really be proud of. Make sure you stick around too. There is going to be a very special musical performance following this. But one more time, thank you everyone for joining us. And please stay safe, stay healthy, stand strong. Windsor Essex, we love you. Thank you so much.
could start a balcony band. Sing from the rooftops, I'm your no-hand man. Oh, the dark days come a long way. Front lines and fences, it's a no man's land. God bless the superhero medicine man. Oh, the dark days come a long way. Sometimes we need to get lost to find our way. Don't talk all day. Don't talk slow. I'm dying to know. Live streamed and lonely, oh, it's something to see. Hard eyes, smiles through computer screens. Oh, the dark days come a long way. Driving in the dark, got nowhere to be. Rights in the street and now I can't breathe. Oh, the dark days, will we ever come a long way? Sometimes we need to get lost to find our way. Don't talk all day, but don't